The court is now in session. Julian Blaue and Edy Poppy are together charged for violating the law against structural violence. The FIFA World Cup in 2014 had allegedly severe negative consequences for the inhabitants of Rio's favelas, including the injured party Gomes and Santos. By watching the World Cup in 2014 on television, Blaue and Poppy are charged under the law against structural violence, paragraph 25, section 1, letter A, for consuming a product that is produced without ethical concern and contributing to the impairment of Gomes and Santos' fundamental human needs. Because of this, the prosecutor believes that the attack on Blaue and Poppy in Rio 2015 in reality was an act of self-defense by Gomes and Santos. On that basis, Blaue and Poppy are in the second count charged under the law, paragraph 25, section 1, letter B, for contributing to the unjust imprisonment of Gomes and Santos. The defendants have allegedly not only harmed Gomes and Santos by watching the World Cup on television and contributed to their unjust imprisonment, but also profited on these acts. The injured party, Gomes and Santos, were unable to attend today's hearing. Their interests will be safeguarded by the prosecutor of the imagined state of all nations and the defendants by their defense attorney. Dear people watching this trial on Court Stage TV, if you play a member of the audience, your task is to watch and ensure that this is a just and fair trial. Feel free to write any comments in the YouTube comments section during this trial, or share your thoughts on whether this trial is just and fair. If you play a member of the jury, you will have to decide whether Blaue and Poppy are guilty or not. I ask you to stay focused. If not, the miscarriage of justice will be on your conscience. And if this becomes a precedence case, it may lead to an official law against structural violence being enacted, creating the possibility for future trials against all of you. Therefore, your verdict will have an effect on all your lives in the future. My document says your name is Ragnhild Mo.
No, that's not my real name. That's my parents' dream of me. In reality, I am Edy Poppy.
Do you plead guilty as charged in any of the counts, Ms. Poppy?
Yes, guilty on both counts, Your Honor.
Julian Blaue, is that your real name?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you plead guilty as charged in any of the counts?
Guilty on both counts, Your Honor.
You may sit down.
Thank you.
I must remind the jury that the defendant's plea of guilt is not sufficient in order for you to convict them. The prosecutor must prove beyond all reasonable doubt that Blaue and Poppy are guilty as charged, and their defense will have a chance to contradict this. They are both free to ask the defendants questions during this hearing. I think it's time for me to introduce you to the prosecutor of the imagined state of all nations for her opening statement. Prosecutor, the court stage is yours.
Dear jury, believe me, Blaue and Poppy are the brutal top dogs in this bloody interaction we talk about in this trial. They are the perpetrators. And who's the underdog? There's not only one victim, not only two. There are thousands, if not millions, of victims suffering from the vicious game Blaue and Poppy play and profit from. There's a good message. Luckily for the poor in the world, the defendants seem to be tired of being violent lawbreakers. They now crave for an adequate punishment in a case that is very well documented and backed by evidence, testimonies and proof. The atrocious crime against Gomes and Santos. An adequate punishment might help them to stop acting out structural violence against the underprivileged in the world. If you support Blaue and Poppy's own guilty pleas and defer my charge, this will be a short trial. Please vote guilty in both counts, and we can end early and go home or have a Corona beer or two at the Zoom bar. I come from Germany. Guten Abend, guten Morgen, guten Tag.
Now, let me introduce you to Blaue and Poppy's defense attorney. The court stage is yours.
We are broadcasting live from Court Stage TV. It is a show, so don't believe in my client's wish to be found guilty. I am obliged to defend them for the sake of a fair trial, and because I am convinced they are not only innocent, but traumatized victims. Blaue and Poppy consider themselves the top dogs in their interactions with the world, acting out structural violence towards the so-called underprivileged. In reality, they are the underdogs. They see themselves as successful, privileged artists touring the world with left-wing, intellectual and sexy performance art. It is not. They are not. They are tortured under the structurally violent influences of capitalism. They are lost within their own imagined state of all nations. It's ridiculous, and it's pitiful. And that is exactly why I must defend them. Dear jury, do not feed their obsession. Find the defendants not guilty.
It is time to address the criminal charges against Blaue and Poppy. In the first count, Blaue and Poppy are charged for acting out structural violence by watching the FIFA World Cup in 2014 on television. It is a violation of the law against structural violence to consume a product that is produced without ethical concern. Now, the first question we need to ask is whether or not the FIFA World Cup in 2014 was an unethical product. And if so, did Blaue and Poppy harm Gomez and Santos by watching it?
As a consequence of that seemingly innocent TV watching, favela houses were removed, people were displaced and social programs were cancelled. As we can read this in a scientific investigation by Phyllis Busler. Watching the World Cup, Blaue and Poppy stole Gomez's entire livelihood.
Your Honour, I have information regarding the year that Brazil won the bid for the World Cup in 2007. That was when they were at their economic height and the gap between rich and poor was at its lowest. And in fact, in 2014, Pelé, who is one of Brazil's most famous footballers and himself from a favela, he opened a state-of-the-art football stadium where the lights of the stadium were powered entirely by the movement of the players on the pitch. It would seem to me that anybody that watched the World Cup during this year would have contributed to these fantastic technological advancements, and my clients are no different. If they watched the World Cup, they did a service to Mr. Gomez and Mr. Santos. They are not guilty of this charge.
Is there any evidence proving that the FIFA World Cup actually impaired the lives of Gomez and Santos?
Again, by watching this World Cup, Blaue and Poppy literally threw Gomez and Santos out of their houses, onto the street. And already poor, now even poorer men, they had no choice but to attack their attackers back in self-defense.
My clients were brutally attacked by Mr. Gomez and Mr. Santos on Christmas 2015. This is well over 1 year when the FIFA World Cup was shown in summer 2004. There is also no way that Mr. Gomez and Mr. Santos could know precisely who my clients were. There is no connection. Your Honour, my clients were the victims, and I would actually like to call Ms. Poppy to the stand to verify this. And Ms. Poppy, if you could stand with me. Thank you, Ms. Poppy. Now, in 2015, as we've noted, you were on holiday with your family in Brazil. You were also there with your young son. He was still a baby, if I understand it. Were you still breastfeeding at that point, Ms. Poppy?
Yes.
And on the evening of the 24th of December, you all went for a walk. Was your baby with you?
Of course, he's always with us. He was always with us.
Were you carrying any weapons on that night, Miss Poppy?
No. Why?
Just a yes or no will suffice, Miss
No.
Poppy.
Speak a bit higher, Miss Poppy, so
Yes,
the
sorry.
jury can hear you.
All right. No, I was not carrying any weapons.
Thank you. So you kept a very detailed account of this in your MacBook diary. You start a passage, we decided to take an evening walk in the city. It was Christmas Eve. Can you please tell us what happened next, Miss Poppy?
Yes, so I'm wearing exactly the same thing as I'm wearing today, actually, this very same dress and fake pearl necklace, lipstick, red lipstick, and Julian, my partner, I call him Yuma, is also wearing exactly the same Panama hat, a linen white dress. Not a dress, I mean a suit, and a tie, a black tie. And we didn't know then that nobody wears ties in Rio. Only tourists wear tie in Rio. So we were walking along with our little son, Bela. He was in the pram and he was sleeping. And we went to this place called Lagoa, a really beautiful lake with a Christmas tree floating in the middle with on the mountain. Anybody who's been to Rio, who are from Rio, knows that Cristo Redentor is a huge sculpture, the world's largest sculpture of Jesus, just standing there and kind of blessing you. And so we felt really blessed, and we had bought some cheap champagne at the petrol station, but it tasted like wonderful because I was just so happy with my sleeping baby and my very alive love for Julian. And I had bought a Leica camera for this very occasion to go to Brazil. It was my first time. So I took pictures of Julian at this lake. He took pictures of me as well. And you can see there the legs of Bela sleeping. And we were just enjoying life, I think, yeah. If I'm honest, it's like one of the absolute highlights of my life.
So just to recap so far, Miss Poppy, you were having the dream night, dressed as each other's dream partners. Everything was in place. The statue of the Christ is looking over you on Christmas Eve. But then something happened. Can you tell us?
Yes, the time went really, really fast. And there were a lot of other people around us, but suddenly everybody was gone. And I looked at the watch and it was midnight. And we thought, okay, let's go as well. So we left and came to a little dark spot. I knew it wasn't long. I knew the motorway was just on the other side, but it was like 100 meters or something in a park. But anyway, I was happy. I didn't want to be this nervous mother that doesn't want to do anything. So I was just enjoying. And as we were walking there, I suddenly see these two men coming towards us. And then I look down and I see that they don't have any shoes on. And then in the next second, they just take out this really big knife and they say, "Da todo, give us everything you have, da todo." And I didn't have much, but I took this fake necklace, I threw it away. I had a Leica camera, I threw it away. I threw my bag away. And they just continued with this big knife saying, "Da todo, give us everything you have, da todo."
And what was going through your mind at that time, Miss Poppy? How were you feeling?
Really scared, and I'd been so happy, but now I thought this is maybe the end of everything. And then the worst thing was that my son Bela, he was in the pram, and the pram had gone away, and
Just take your time, Miss Poppy.
and I thought, maybe. I mean, one thing is if I lose my life, but what about him? He's so new in life. He was just 6 months old at the time. I thought it can't be. So I tried to throw more things away, but I just ran then to him. And Julian, he didn't follow. He didn't come, and I didn't know what to do, if I should run back or not. I just stood there for a while, and then Julian came. And
Do you think about that night? What would have happened if you had lost your son?
I've been thinking about that a lot, and no, it's like I can't. I don't know. I can't really think. I mean, I think about it, and I can't think about it because then everything just is meaningless.
It's okay.
And life is not worth anything anymore.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Poppy. You can take a seat. Dear jury, this is what a victim looks like. Miss Poppy was fearful. She was under the influence of maternal hormones, and she was in shock. My clients were brutally attacked in an unnecessary attack when they had this young child. This was not self-defense by watching television.
Miss Poppy, why are you pretending to be a victim when in reality you are the perpetrator? You and your darling Blaue were the first ones who attacked Gomez and Santos by watching the TV. That assault had much worse consequences than this little incident.
This was not a little incident, State. A very big knife was used, as my client has just explained, to attack them that night. And the preconditions of self-defense under paragraph 10, they state that self-defense does not go beyond what is justifiable. This assault went much further than necessary. Mr. Blaue and Miss Poppy were unarmed and with a vulnerable baby.
Mr. Blaue, would you please take the stand for me?
Of course.
Mr. Blaue, you and your family, you returned to Brazil 2018, to the very place where you were assaulted. Can you tell us why?
We wanted to find proof for the fact that we had watched the television and the World Cup 2014 and acted out structural violence by doing so.
I would like to show a video giving evidence that you made on your investigation journey when you were back to Brazil, and afterwards you can explain the jury what you found out.
Back on crime scenes in Rio de Janeiro, we want to find out if the two guys really are in jail and how their situation is in general. We want to find proofs to build a strong case against ourselves. First stop at our investigation journey will be the tourist police office.
At this tourist police office, we are lucky. The same police officer who interrogated us and the oldest of the two assaulters here 3 years ago is at work. And he remembers us being some of many victims that Christmas, many more than previous Christmases. In 2015, criminality increased because of the World Cup.
Yes, and in addition to this, the tourist police officer told us also that Gomez and Santos specifically had suffered from that sporting event.
Mr. Blaue, if you could go back to that time and meet these gentlemen again, would you have defended your wife and child?
You have asked me this before, and I never understand what you mean. Do you mean if I would have taken a weapon and...
If you had a weapon, for example.
My whole point is that I had a weapon by watching the World Cup. That was already the weapon. So yes, I did the first strike.
And then they came towards your wife and child with a big knife.
Exactly.
Would you
In self-defense.
if you could have defended your wife and child against that big knife, would you have done so?
You mean if I again
Yes or
would,
no, Mr. Blaue?
if I would have defended their attack in self-defense?
Mr. Blaue, let me rephrase
Kind
the
of a
question
double
for you.
self-defense.
Did your son deserve the attack with the knife?
No.
If you could go back to Mr. Gomez and Santos, what would you give to them? What would you do differently?
I would have asked them for. I would apologize, probably. I mean, that sounds naive, or I don't know what it sounds, but the fact is that we spoke firstly, and that we made their entire life unlivable. So I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be able to, but I should just have apologized.
Mr. Blaue, I'm questioning your priorities here. In an earlier interview, you said something that was quite telling. Could you play the recording for me?
Poppy goes into a very difficult account of what was happening when the assailants attacked. What was your position during this attack, Mr. Blaue?
I was scared, but I was not scared enough, for instance, not trying to save my credit card and dealing with them.
So it would seem, Mr. Blaue, that your credit card obviously has much more value to you and the welfare of Gomez and Santos than your own wife and child. There seems to be a severe problem with your thinking at the moment. You seem to be manipulated not only by capitalism, but also by FIFA, that you seem responsible for that. And you seem to have had a profound effect on your wife and each other as well in terms of brainwashing. You are clearly victims of the very same structures of marketing capitalism that you claim to want to destroy. And in this state of mind, it seems that you have no free will. Without free will, there is no guilt. You are not liable to be found guilty under this account by my assessment. Thank you, Mr. Blaue.
Thank you. I want to take one step back. Let's suppose that the FIFA World Cup actually had severe consequences for Gomez and Santos. Is there any evidence proving that Blaue Poppy even watched the game?
I would like Miss Poppy to take the stand. Miss Poppy and Mr. Blaue. Miss Poppy, can you tell us what you did at the 8th of July 2014? You were in Nesodden, referring to your diary.
Yes. Julian and we were a new couple and very much in love. He had just gotten a little son, 1 month old, and as you might have heard, jury from Julian's accent, he's German, and it was this World Cup, Brazil playing against Germany, and Julian's always been very interested in Brazil, so I thought it's perfect. Let's have a party together, watch this game, and we can tell this little kid Blixa about it when he gets older. Problem is that we didn't have a TV, and I don't know, we didn't think about watching it on the internet or something at that time. So, but Julian's ex-girlfriend has a TV, and she lives in Nesodden, as you said.
And
so we decided to go there.
It's her son, is that correct?
It's her son,
It's
yeah.
her son, yes.
I'm the bonus mom. So we decided to take a boat. We managed to miss the boat by like 1 minute, which really pissed me off. Anyway, we took the next boat, and when we arrived, we were halfway into the match already. And the first thing the ex-girlfriend does is to give me the child, which just immediately falls asleep.
Yeah.
She starts to hoover in the
Did
very
you put
room.
the TV on?
I think the TV was already
The TV
on.
was already
yes.
on.
But she was hoovering, so I couldn't
Yeah.
hear anything. So I had to turn the volume on.
Yeah.
Like, not on, I mean louder. But Julian didn't care. He just kept chattering. And I was like there kind of trying to demonstrate, oh, are we not having fun? But I think I was the only one maybe not having fun because maybe they had. In the end, I think that I read in my diary that the score was 7-1.
7-1.
Julian
so
notice any of the goals, and I don't
Okay,
remember much.
I may sum up. So the TV was on.
Yes.
You turned up the volume at a certain point because
Yep.
you wanted to listen, to watch, to enjoy the game.
Yeah.
And you remembered, or at least you wrote the score down in your diary.
Yeah.
You,
I even made my whole family watch the game.
your whole family
Yeah.
watched it. You watched the game and therefore you consumed an unethical product which had severe consequences for Gomes and Santos, the two Brazilian men. Thank you.
Unfortunately, yes.
Miss Poppy, what was the score at half time?
No idea.
You said that the television was on when you arrived, is that correct?
I don't remember putting it on. I just remember turning off the volume. So I suppose yes.
So even if you had missed the next ferry, this would have played, and
Maybe.
so okay. So this would have been unavoidable in that case, the fact that the television might have been on. And also you said that the vacuum cleaner was going and that Mr. Blaue was chatting and the young boy Blixer was asleep. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Blaue, what was your favourite part of the game?
Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Blaue. Your Honour, it would seem very clear to me that my clients did not consume this game to any level. The television was on, regardless of whether my clients had been there or not. There was the vacuum cleaner, the chattering. There seems to be, from the state prosecutor, at least concerns about FIFA, but that does not concern my clients as individuals. My clients did not consume an unethical product.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but you argue that the defendants did not consume the World Cup, and if they did, the World Cup is not an unethical product. Therefore, there is no connection between the TV watching and the harm suffered by Gomes and Santos. And in any case, Blaue and Poppy were forced by capitalist structures to watch it, making the alleged harm unavoidable.
That's correct, Your Honour.
Now, the state, on the other hand, argues that Blaue and Poppy harmed Gomes and Santos by watching the FIFA World Cup, which was an unethical product, and which later forced Gomes and Santos to attack Blaue and Poppy in self-defense.
That is correct.
On to the next count. Under count 2, Blaue and Poppy are charged for acting out structural violence by contributing to the unjust imprisonment of Gomes and Santos after their alleged act of self-defense.
According to the law, it is a crime to imprison someone who acts in self-defense. After Blaue and Poppy were attacked, they pressed charges against Gomes and Santos, who were, in fact, in self-defense. And I would like to show you here clear evidence signed by Ms. Poppy. This is the police report from Rio de Janeiro Tourist Police Office.
Is there any evidence proving that the police actually caught Gomes and Santos after this incident?
Ms. Poppy, would you take the stand, please? Is there any evidence that they caught them?
Yeah, so as soon as we had managed to escape and we came to that big road that I talked about, then they were there immediately, the police, with lots of machine guns, and they kind of took Julian and me. I think he got really scared at that point. They said, like, wait here, and then we heard some kind of cars. I remember, like, a gunshot or something, some screaming. And then 2 minutes later, or maybe not 2, but like shortly after, they'd caught them, and they said to me, like, turn around, or they said to both of us. But I was not quick enough to turn around, and I could see, like, the gaze of poverty that penetrated my eyes, that it looked really straight into my eyes before I managed to turn, and I still have that gaze.
So, Ms. Poppy, do you mean that the police had already caught the attackers at this point? You arrived at the police station, but they had already caught the attackers by then?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And did you witness that?
Well, we heard it. We didn't see it with our eyes, but I could hear sounds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What happened at the tourist police station?
Yeah, so
You were waiting.
the assaulters were put into another room, and we were there waiting, and we got the camera back, and it had blood on it, actually. And I got really stressed with this blood. I was a bit in shock, and so
Miss Poppy, what do you think? Whose blood was it on the camera?
I always thought it was Gomez or Santos. We didn't know their names then, but I thought it was the attackers. Also because the police later said that they were injured,
said
and
it, yes.
one of them had to go to the hospital. But we were kind of in a kind of trance. I don't know. We didn't know what to do, and so we took the camera, and I took pictures. Here you can see a picture of Julian and our son sleeping in the tourist police office. Julian also took pictures of me, and whenever I look at these pictures now in retrospect, I feel like there is no one at home. It's like an empty shell. It's like a ghost I see there, and yeah.
So Gomez and Santos were not only the victims of your earlier acts of structural violence, they were even harmed and injured by Rio police.
Yes.
Is there any evidence proving that Gomez and Santos actually were imprisoned?
Yeah, let's see the video of your investigation journey, if I am correct, which was a big success. Can we see? Thank you.
But the officer can't tell us what had happened to the two assaulters after the one who got caught that night had left the office. The officer says, go to Palacio da Justiça, the Palace of Justice.
At Palacio de Justiça, the Palace of Justice, they tell us that the oldest of our two assaulters was imprisoned until September 2017 and is now released on parole. Once a month he has to go to a prison office to prove he isn't a fugitive. The youngest assaulter was never imprisoned. Their contact information cannot be handed out. Still, having been imprisoned and then having to sign in now is a painful effect of our structural violence and evidence against us.
But we are also interpreting the news positively, as a proof of civil rights for the very poor. The teenager was never jailed. The sentenced person is released from prison on parole. The juridical privacy of the two men is respected. Can we respect it? To meet at least one of the two assaulters is a main goal of our investigation. We are lucky again. The employees are allowed to give us the address of the prison. Maybe we can find out when he's due to sign in again and meet him then. We go to the prison office.
In this shabby prison office, situated in the poor northern part of Rio, we are unlucky.
So the young Santos was actually never imprisoned.
That is correct.
There is a man in one of these shots here just leaving the police station, it seems. Mr. Blaue, can you tell me, do you know who that gentleman is?
Yes, that's the police officer.
Can you be more specific?
That's the police officer we spoke to both 2015, Christmas Eve, and then again now.
The one that caught Gomez and Santos?
At least the one who was involved, yes.
We cannot see his face and he doesn't speak in your video. Do you know why?
Yes, he came actually to us and said that he didn't want to be filmed, and that's why he turns away his face in order to not to be recognized by any public viewers.
Because he was afraid?
Yes, I think so.
It seems very clear to me, Your Honour, this man, this policeman who was involved with catching Gomez and Santos is showing fear here 3 years later. We find that Santos was never imprisoned and his partner is. Was this policeman therefore afraid that Santos was still on the loose? I would consider this to be evidence that he was in fact the one responsible for catching Gomez and Santos and would have pressed charges regardless of whether my clients had or not.
Counterfactual. I
Miss
mean,
Poppy,
Yes.
did you sign the charge?
Yes.
So,
State, may I see this report?
yeah, it
I
is
don't have a copy of
with
that.
you, Your Honour.
Thank you, Your Honour. I would also like to remind the court that my clients were in shock, as we saw from Ms. Poppy's earlier testimony, and the evidence of brainwashing from the capitalism.
Do you have any
And so
evidence
even if
for
they had signed this, it was not done in sound state of mind.
Are you claiming?
Excuse me, Your Honour, may I have a...
When I don't have evidence for the shock.
What is it?
This is the client's legal name, is that correct?
Ragnhild Moe, yes.
Yes, you see, there's no signature on here. But the police...
It's not signed. You never signed this, Miss Poppy, did you?
I remember that I signed it. I don't know. Is it? I'm very surprised that there is no
Is it your
signature.
second copy?
Yes.
You just
It could
which
be
was given to
yeah.
you?
Maybe that's because I have a clear
So
memory of
you
signing
don't
it.
have a copy of the original delivered to the...
It must
Police
be
officer?
at the tourist police in Rio. Is that correct?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
haven't
we
gotten.
can-
We didn't get enough funding to make the trial against ourselves that we could go back to Rio and do the real investigation. So
Yes, but Ms.
that's why
Poppy,
we're hoping later maybe that we can be in a real court, so that we can make a real trial. So that if we make this a precedent
I can
case,
bring it
we
later.
can
Miss-
go to
Mr.
the
Poppy,
police station in Rio and get
we
the
have
real
no evidence
paper
of your
with the signed
signature.
copy.
But we do have a signature of the policeman here. You did not press charges against these two men, Ms. Poppy. Thank you, Your Honour. Thank you,
Thank
State.
you. Now, not only are Blaue and Poppy charged for harming Gomez and Santos by watching the FIFA World Cup and contributing to the unjust imprisonment of Gomez, but also profiting on these acts. But before we continue, I'd like the audience to comment in the YouTube comment section if you think this trial so far seems to be just and fair. And while you do that, we will have a 3-minute recess. Is the comments ready? 1 more minute? That's fine. So we have received quite a lot of comments, and we appreciate that. Frederick writes, "They are just as much guilty as they are victims of structural violence." Sean P. writes, "This is extremely comfortable to watch." Sebastian Warholm writes, "They should be imprisoned for making this show. Tell the judge to end this nonsense." Maria Garcia Di Meo writes, "Seems just and fair." Joachim Nilsvik writes, "This trial seems to blame specific individual based on the actions of many. The World Cup would have happened regardless." Anya writes, "Agreed, but it is indeed a confusing case." Joachim writes, "There's a substantial difference from indirect and direct violence." Hilde writes, "This trial seems to have stranded in a rhetorical impasse. All parties are clinging to their original position from the start, and there is thus very little development or additional insight added. Joachim writes, they were physically attacked and their lives were in danger. It is art. Thank you very much. We will now continue on the case.
Can I comment the comment?
No, not now, Mr. Blaue. We will continue on the case. How did Blaue and Poppy inflict harm on Gomez and Santos and profit themselves?
I would like to introduce you to a system. Let me clarify further by putting exact numbers to the guilt question. The most severe forms of structural violence are committed when someone profits on the other's suffering. I would like to use some figures we know from social media. One is the smiley, which shows a profit, and one is a frowny,
Is this a
which
joke?
will in our system show harm. This side will be the calculation for Gomez and Santos, whereas this side represents Blaue and Poppy. Again, the most severe forms of structural violence are committed when someone profits on the other's suffering. In the public feeling of justice, harm and profit should not be too unequally distributed. For the fear of losing their lives in the battle with Rio police and the injury which was shown by the blood on the camera, Gomez and Santos get 8,000 harm points, and for the traumatic experience in the night, Christmas Eve 2015 in Rio, Blaue and Poppy get 7,000 harm points.
Your Honour, this is ridiculous. And who knows what these numbers are based on? And even if we agree with any kind of scale, the state is suggesting that my clients have been harmed less than Gomez and Santos. This is ridiculous.
Why is that? Why is Blaue and Poppy harmed less than Gomez and Santos in this incident?
Because of the injury on the blood, shown by the blood on the camera. Mr. Blaue, do you agree?
I agree, yes.
As a father and a husband, Mr. Blaue, how can you ignore the fact that your child was ignored, that he was attacked?
As we heard in Poppy's testimony, the child slept and slept and slept peacefully. He didn't notice anything at all.
Ms. Poppy, do you agree?
Actually not. I'm sorry, baby. But I think that in the bigger picture, we are the perpetrators. But on that very night, in that very moment, it's the worst moment of my life, the most scary. And I had just become a mother. I think nothing can be compared to like the fear of losing your child. So I think we should get more. I think we should get 15,000.
Just
for
fair?
that.
15,000, you say?
I think for that night, yeah.
15,000.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If this should be just a fair trial, we have to be honest, even if we
Your
want
Honour,
to be
I'm still
convinced.
Just fair, I
confused
changed
what
this.
these numbers are actually
15,000
based on.
for the night of the assault and for the fear of the child. That's double.
Double
Nearly.
what?
What is this number based on?
It's
This
not based
number
on anything, Your Honour.
is based on profit and harm points. Mr. Blaue, would you take the stand?
Yes.
can you tell us how much did you profit by watching the TV, the World Cup?
As Edy described, it was not so much fun. 10.
10 profit points.
You understand the scale, Mr. Blaue.
Yeah, it's easy to understand. It's common sense.
And
50,000.
how much did the horrible consequences of your TV watching harm Gomes and Santos?
So the defense is right. I cannot know, but I can estimate, and I think everybody would agree that losing, for instance, your house and social programs that were cancelled in order to pay the mega sport event, that is a lot of harm. So when I estimate 20,000,
20,000? 20,000 for the consequences of
Your Honor, are we really
watching
doing this
the
in
World
court?
Cup for Gomes and Santos.
I'm curious on the balance here. We see some kind of unbalance. That's the point, right?
You will see it in the end. I think the numbers say it all, and the jury, you can draw your own conclusions now. That means guilty in count 1 and count 2 for Blaue and Poppy.
No, again, this is not a trial show. This is a child show.
Okay, I can also continue by telling you how Poppy and Blaue and Poppy used, not to say abused, Gomes and Santos in order to boost their art careers. Mr. Blaue, when you shortly after the incident in Rio, when you were back in Norway, you had the chance to publish an article. Is that correct?
Correct, in the Norwegian paper Ny Tid.
Ny Tid. And can you verify somewhere that you profited on the Gomes and Santos story?
Yeah, I can just point out this subtitle here.
Can you read it, the quote?
Yeah, in Norwegian it says, "Overfallet var en undervisningstime." In English, that would say, the assault was a lesson. So no doubt I profited from what Gomes and Santos did. I'm writing about the assault.
And how much did you profit on that?
Yeah, I profited cultural capital measured in likes on Facebook.
In likes on Facebook, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
235 likes.
Yeah.
And then also like economic capital, 5,000 Norwegian kroner.
5,000 Norwegian kroner. That is equivalent to 300 profit points. And later, the same year, you published another essay. Is that correct?
Yes. Now in the very hot experimental emerging art magazine, EE. And here I wrote, "Shame is a revolutionary feeling. Nevertheless, I am the proud cover boy of the magazine with a fake wound on my forehead. Gomes and Santos have helped our project, giving it the aura of hot, dangerous art."
And how much did you profit on that? How much did you earn?
I got 1,724 likes for the article.
Yeah.
And again, I earned 5,000 Norwegian kroner.
5,000 Norwegian kroner and over. That's equivalent to 1,200 profit points. And then tell me, Mr. Blaue, in 2017, in September, your art career really got boosted. Can you tell us about this?
Yes, all this shows how the line goes up and the other line
Here we have it.
is your task to draw the line of Gomes and Santos. So I started a well-funded PhD project at the University of Agder, where I, with artistic means, try to criticize the production of poverty in globalized capitalism through our experience with the so-called assault in Rio.
And how much did you earn so far?
I earned, again, now only economic capital. The rest is unmeasurable. 1,567,000 Norwegian kroner.
1,567 Norwegian kroner.
That's my salary.
That's at least 25,000 profit points.
So, prosecutor, you can give Mr. Blaue and Ms. Poppy as many profit or harm points as you like. It doesn't change the fact that they were the victims of the assault. They did not harm Gomez and Santos.
At the Palacio da Justiça, you found out that Gomez was sent to prison.
Can I sit down?
Yes.
Thank you.
And you went to the jail, you wanted to find him, and you wanted to even to invite him to this very trial. Can you tell us what you saw in the prison? You found out that you had exposed him to even more harm, is that correct?
Yeah, let me start first here.
Yeah.
We found out Gomez was released on parole,
Yeah.
as we have said in that video, but he had to sign in from time to time. In the prison office where Gomez had to wait to make his signature, there were tons of proverbs on the wall. See them here. From the Bible, Badr African tribes, for instance, kindness creates kindness, or your ideas should be high, but your voice low.
Mr. Blaue, I'm very interested in what you have to say, and I'd like to speak to you about this afterwards. Could you take the stand for me and tell me what else you found?
Take the stand, Mr. Blaue.
Isn't it?
Take the stand.
Okay. Yeah, I can just continue, I guess.
Please tell me what else you found. I'm very
Yes.
curious about this, and I have a few questions.
Okay, among these tranquilizers, as I would call them, by religious leading lights that we indirectly had exposed Gomez to by making him go to jail, we also found this proverb by Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. And on the poster he says, "Each dream you leave behind is a part of your future that will no longer exist." One of the first things I got when I started my PhD at the University of Agder is this MacBook Pro. The assault was, as I mentioned, central in my PhD. I profited again with that MacBook Pro. So it isn't absurd to say our assaulter gave me a new MacBook Pro. By indirectly supporting Apple, I gave him a quote by Steve Jobs. "Each dream you leave behind is a part of your future that will no longer exist." What else than the dream of eternal access to Apple products can Steve Jobs' face, name, and proverb stand for in the eyes of a penniless criminal? Steve Jobs produced a desire in Gomez, as I would put it, who was waiting in the prison office without providing the means to fulfill it. This hopeless dream production harmed Gomez.
Do you believe that, Mr. Blaue?
Yes, I believe, even if it sounds theoretical, that is actual harm, to be exposed to a desire for an Apple product, but not receiving the means to achieve that goal, to fulfill that desire. And
It's not only your bad conscience you're talking about. It's real harm.
It's real harm because I supported it and I profited
It's fine.
from it.
We're done?
With that argument, yes. With that testimony, if you want.
I would like to ask a couple of questions then, Mr. Blaue, as I mentioned. I'm a little confused. It's a very kind of roundabout way to get to some kind of point. So let me clarify. This poster, this proverb, gives a promise of Apple products. Is that right?
Exactly.
I don't see... Are there any Apple logos on this poster, Mr. Blaue?
Yes, the face.
I see. And would Gomez and Santos have recognized this face?
Yes, they would also have recognized the name.
Before they went to prison?
What is the question?
Would they have recognized the face before they saw this poster?
I guess so. It's a famous man.
Mm-hmm. So then they would have been exposed to the dream, this so-called dream of Apple products, well before you apparently exposed them to this.
I mean, we're always talking about many people acting out structural violence. We are
I
not
thought
the
we were
only
talking
ones.
about you.
We're talking about us, but there are others, no doubt.
Do you know whether or not Gomez and Santos want anything to do with Apple products?
Yes, I would suppose so. I mean,
On the night that you were assaulted, you had an Apple MacBook Pro, is that right?
which they didn't see.
Did they ask you for it?
No, they didn't see it.
If they were exposed to this dream before they came into this prison and would have been exposed to what you describe as a dream for Apple products, why did they not ask for these Apple products when they attacked you on that night? You had one there ready and waiting.
Two things. Maybe this desire was not planted in their hearts and brains yet because I had not
Because you
exposed
planted
them.
it.
Yeah, I planted it.
I
That's
see.
one thing. The other thing is they couldn't see it. I'm sure they would have taken it.
Okay. Mr. Blaue, you also mentioned there are other proverbs by Jesus, the Buddha, Gentiesa. Are they big capitalist structures, as you describe?
I described them as tranquilizers.
Tranquilizers. I think this is just another example of Mr. Blaue being brainwashed by these capitalist structures, Your Honour. He can't seem to make a distinction between the proverbs being to do with actual products, buying, capitalism, and ways of living. I don't see that the Steve Jobs can be any different, and in any case, my client has admitted that he was not the person to expose them, since they would have known this before. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Blaue.
I would like to go on with evidence. I would like to show you the video from the investigation journey 2018, where Blaue and Poppy were visiting this prison.
We have so far in our lives at least bought one iBook, 3 MacBook Air, 1 iPhone, and for this very project also a MacBook Pro.
So, dear jury, I was counting 6 Apple products. How to feel like a king. Do it like Blaue and Poppy. Go to a favela and tell the family members, the underprivileged family members of the prisoners who are waiting outside, which new fancy Apple products you just bought. Then study their favela faces of envy, and then run to your apartment home in the rich and southern part of Rio and feel even more privileged, having left them also with hopeless dreams. Thank you. I would like to give, therefore, Blaue and Poppy 200 profit points for receiving a MacBook Pro, and 2,000 harm points for Gomez and Santos for hopeless dreams. Thank you.
I think that my client, Mr. Blaue, is not well. He has been manipulated by certain ideas into believing that Apple is important in terms of these proverbs, and that this would have harmed Mr. Gomez and Mr. Santos. In fact, in this very video, the only person actually holding what could have been an Apple product is one of the so-called underprivileged, the man in the red T-shirt. I would just like to illustrate this point, if I may, in a different way, Mr. Blaue. Can you please step into the floor for me, onto the courtroom floor? Yes.
Okay.
Please face the jury. Thank you, Mr. Blaue. Now, you're dressed identical to how you were dressed on Christmas Eve 2015. A white male, let's call you saviour from the West. Were you exposing Mr. Gomez and Mr. Santos, these two underprivileged men, to a hopeless dream? I'm looking at your colonial style dress here. You've had the power to open this courtroom today. I'm also wondering if you're exposing me to a hopeless dream, Mr. Blaue. After all, I am not a white, powerful Western man. Am I suffering because I cannot achieve this dream?
I really don't think I'm a dream.
And yet, here we are. For what reason do you want to be found guilty,
Objection.
Mr. Blaue?
Overruled. You can answer that, Mr. Blaue.
I want to be found guilty because I think I have acted out structural violence, and that's nothing I'm proud of. I don't think I'm a dream.
Please face the jury and speak to the jury. Yeah. My
That's
point
fine.
is that this is all a matter of interpretation, Mr. Blaue. For the same reason, this poster by Steve Jobs may not have been selling a hopeless dream. You may sit down.
I think my wife is a dream, yes.
I see. And Miss Poppy, did you provide Mr. Gomez and Mr. Santos with the means to achieve the dream of you, your blonde hair, your blue eyes? Did you provide them with that?
What do you mean?
Did you sleep with them, Miss Poppy?
Objection. That's
Sustained,
sexism.
sustained.
Thank you for those beautiful lines, dear defense. And even if you're defending us against our will, the better you act, the better this trial show becomes, the more glory Julian and I will receive, future job opportunities, cultural capital, money, you name it. The staging of the trial against ourselves and the funding we got, for all that, we have to thank Gomez and Santos. Even you, dear defense, have to thank them for your salary in this production.
Very well. For the staging of the trial against ourselves on Court Stage TV, based on the assaulter's deed, Blaue and Poppy get 25,000 profit points.
25,000 for the staging of this court hearing. And how
Are
many
there someone
harm
coming?
points?
Your Honor,
Yeah.
I just got some news here, and it says that the trial against ourselves now also have entered the game Shame Private by world-famous artist Falk. And he also made, apparently, this collage here. So this we could never have done without Gomez and Santos, without the assault and without our public shame. So I think 25,000 is too little. I would put it up to 35,000.
35,000 profit points.
For the trial against ourselves.
That's fine.
yes.
That's enough. That's enough points for both Gomez and Santos and for Blaue and Poppy. We have now examined the counts, whether or not Blaue and Poppy profited on their actions and whether their actions harmed Gomez and Santos. Prosecutor,
Yes.
it is time to continue with the closing arguments, and I would like you to start summing up your arguments.
Watching the World Cup, Blaue and Poppy punched Gomez and Santos 7-1 in their face. Gomez and Santos punched back in an act of self-defense. Blaue and Poppy then brought Gomez into prison, where they bombarded him with Apple products through the Steve Jobs quote. They did not provide the money in order that he could fulfill those big Apple dreams. Whereas the already privileged Blaue received a MacBook Pro from his university, thanks to Gomez and Santos. The artist duo also transformed this so-called assault into their Blaue and Poppy art currency, creating a series of navel-gazing performances, which this trial is the crown jewel of. The structures are always working for Blaue and Poppy. Everything they touch turns into gold, which they keep for themselves. I am a German actress. I'm interested in German history, and that history has taught me a lesson. Stop the perpetrators before it's too late. Blaue and Poppy are two of these Verbrecher. Villains. In the beginning, I asked for a short trial. It was not short. I ask now for a quick verdict. The case is clear. The defendants want to be guilty. I want them to be even guiltier. Dankeschön.
Defense, you may continue with your closing argument.
A confused artistic duo travels to Rio on a romantic family holiday with their sweet baby boy. On Christmas Eve, they are brutally assaulted at knife point and robbed. So far, so bad. The state prosecutor believes that Mr. Gomez and Mr. Santos, the armed attackers, were acting in self-defense caused by, hold your breath, the victims Blaue and Poppy for watching the remaining minutes of a TV show. Yet Miss Poppy has already testified that they did not watch the game. They could not hear because of the vacuum cleaner. Mr. Blaue was chattering. The baby was asleep. We are yet to find any direct link between Mr. Gomez and Mr. Santos, the criminals. I hope the absurdity of this trial is clear. The state has painted Mr. Blaue and Miss Poppy as self-centered artists, and I agree, this is pretentious performance art. But what they need is compassion. The assault in Rio on Christmas 2015 was real. My clients Blaue and Poppy were the victims of this assault. But they are also the victims of brainwashing. They make choices that they believe are real choices. They watch TV without really knowing why. They measure the world as if everyone were chasing after the carrot of economic success. And they have an unhealthy fetish for Apple products. But that is not their fault. They are pressed under the influence of structurally violent structures. This has left them without free will, and without free will, there can be no criminal act. Take pity on my clients and find them not guilty.
The burden of proof lies on you, prosecutor. Do you have any final arguments before I instruct the jury?
To sum this up, Blaue and Poppy have produced more suffering in the life of Gomez and Santos than the other way around. But what makes this a serious crime is that they intentionally acted out structural violence while they profit. While Gomez and Santos continue suffering, Blaue and Poppy continue to profit on to receive social, economic, and cultural capital. If you don't convict them, they will never stop.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I say something?
Yes, Miss Poppy.
Dear jury, I want to talk to you directly. I've gotten cold feet.
Miss Poppy, this is not the time
I'm a real person.
to talk to the
Blaue
jury.
is
Miss
a
Poppy,
real
if you have
person.
anything to say,
We
you
are
can
just
say it to
artists.
me
We want to
directly.
make
Miss
the world
Poppy,
better, but I don't think we
Miss Poppy,
deserve. When you
Mr. Blaue,
are
can you
thinking
take
about
Miss Poppy into the
convicting
living
us,
room? I think
please think if you are convicting us, you're also
Can I get
convicting
some security
yourself.
on stage?
If this trial should be
Miss
a precedent
Poppy,
case,
I would need you
make
to
sure
stop
that,
now.
that you think
I
about an
understand that this is
adequate
tough.
way.
Miss
I have
Poppy?
3 children. I have
Thank
3
you.
children.
Mr.
and-
Blaue, you can follow your partner. Can I get some security on stage? Can you bring Mr. Blaue to Miss Poppy? That would be very nice. Thank you.
No
I
regard to his
didn't
wife.
want to. Please go. I didn't want to put this on, dear jury. I'm sorry with coming with that too late. I thought it is not necessary, but now it is. I would like to show a video where we see Miss Poppy rehearsing her exaggerating line of the so-called assault, even at the so-called crime scenes. Can we please show this?
Here at Upper Class Lagoa in Rio de Janeiro, where we are standing right now, Julian Blaue, our little son Bela Lucian, and I, Edy Poppy, got assaulted by 2 poor young men from a favela Christmas Eve 2015. They pulled out a big gun and asked us to give them... No, sorry! No, it's really Hollywood. Then they had masks, dressed as Spider-Man, and my golden chain was in danger. He had a tear of real blood, and it dripped down on our face. Okay, sorry, one more time.
Your Honor, I was not informed.
Dear jury, it is time for you to decide whether Blaue and Poppy are guilty or not. Your verdict will express the global sense of justice in this case. In the comment field, there is a link, and you can click on that link and send in your verdict. And if you find the defendants guilty, you can also suggest what an appropriate penalty might be. On the charge given in count 1, did Blaue and Poppy harm Gomez and Santos by watching the FIFA World Cup 2014 on television? And on the charge given in count 2, I must remind the jury that Santos was never imprisoned after the encounter with Blaue and Poppy in Rio 2015. So the question is, did Blaue and Poppy contribute to the unjust imprisonment of Gomez? You may now submit your votes, and we will continue in 3 minutes. Has the votes been counted? Thank you. The votes have been counted, and I will now read the verdict. Blaue Poppy, you may come in. Please stand in the middle. Make sure I'm visible for the jury when I read the verdict. We have received 35 votes. The jury is divided on the question on whether or not Blaue Poppy are guilty for having harmed Gomez and Santos by watching the FIFA World Cup. 51.4% of the jury has voted not guilty. On the charge given in count 2, on whether Blaue Poppy have acted out structural violence by contributing to the unjust imprisonment of Gomez, the jury is again divided. However, 57.1% of the jury has voted guilty as charged. While the defendants gets ready, we will have a quick recess. And while we have that little break, I would now invite the audience to suggest what an appropriate penalty might be. Feel free to write your comments in the YouTube comment section, and we will be back in a short break. We have received suggestions from the jury on the appropriate penalty. After I read some of the suggestions, both the prosecutor and the defense will have a chance to address the question. Let's see here. One suggestion is to sentence the defendants to unlearn their privilege and spend the rest of their lives in advocacy. How do you say it? How do you pronounce it?
Advocacy.
Advocacy. Right. For other Westerners to do so too. They deserve a lifelong sentence, not in jail as such, but with tattoos on their chests, starting with their commitment to change Western capitalist discourses from within. Furthermore, Blaue Poppy shall strive for
Hierarchical.
Thank you.
Hierarchical, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Encounter with populations in Brazil and other countries in the global south. If they fail to do so, a dark cell shall wait for them in the darkest of all places. In fact, if they fail to do so, we will all end up in the darkest of all places. Another suggestion is eat poop. A third suggestion is Julian should give away his entire pay from his PhD at Agder to Gomez and Santos. Another suggests 200 hours of community service. A fourth, they have to pick up apples for the rest of their lives, eat urine, or continue to deconstruct structural violence in a big way. Thank you very much for all your suggestions. We will now continue with the state prosecutor addressing what an appropriate penalty might be.
Blaue and Poppy profited economically on their criminal acts. The imagined state of all nations asks the judge to impose a fine which is equivalent to the well-paid PhD grant of Mr. Blaue. Which wouldn't he have received with Santos and Gomez's help? The juicy story of the so-called assault. The fine should also include the amount of money the artists have received from the Arts Council Norway, Hilden Theatre, Kristiansand Municipality and other institutions, TV channel, magazines and newspapers which brought the story of the privileged artists Blaue and Poppy and the underprivileged Brazilian men. The money should be donated to a non-profit organization working in Rocinha, Gomez and Santos' home favela. The equivalent to all of this will be 5 million Norwegian crowns. Thank you.
Do the defense recognize the prosecutor's suggestion as appropriate?
Your Honour, my clients have been found guilty on only one of the two counts. They are also guilty only as slaves to structural violence. And on the background that they would like to be punished, I would suggest that the best punishment would be no punishment. However, for the purposes of administration, I would suggest 3 months without philosophy books, audio books, or writing materials.
Thank you. We have also received a couple of suggestions from the audience. Any further income gained due the incidents should be donated to charitable actions regarding Brazil. They get to miss all of Brazil's football matches, or forgive yourself on court stage TV. Again, give away the entire pay from the PhD at Agder to charitable actions regarding in Brazil. We appreciate all your suggestions. Now, I would like to invite Edy and Julian. Do you have any thoughts on what an appropriate penalty might be?
Yes, I have actually. I don't think paying all the money we have and ending up in the street will make the world a better place. I really think that making trials against oneself can make the world a better place. So what I would like is that we find 1 or 2 or more people in the jury or in the audience who agrees to go to trial against him or herself on the basis of the law against structural violence. If those trials, which can be done very simple in your basement, living room, on the street, at your grandmother's, in artist loft, in the supermarket, in a shisha bar, in any kind of restaurant, only your imagination can stop you. So it's not about making it grandiose, it's about the content. And if those or that trial would again end with a guilty verdict, making that person again having to find other people to go to trial against him or herself, then maybe trial in flagration might ignite. In the end, there will be so many trials against oneself that the authority can no longer ignore the law against structural violence, and they would have to make it for real.
Thank you, Ms. Poppy. Now, I would like the defendants to come into the courtroom, place yourself in the middle, and I will read out the appropriate sentence. Since we have no legitimate power to enforce a penalty on Blaue Poppy, we cannot follow up a fine on 5 million kroners or imprisonment as suggested. And what Miss Poppy suggested would not lead to a reaction against them, the criminals, but rather deflect the penalty on one of you watching this trial. So I've taken the jury's and the audience's suggestion into account, and in order for the penalty to punish Blaue Poppy and also deter the people in charge of the structures and whom profits the most from structural violence, an appropriate penalty is to mark Blaue Poppy as structural violent criminals, matching ugly tattoos stating guilty of acting out structural violence on their body. Blaue Poppy's violations will be visible and create awareness in the public.
Objection.
However,
Objection.
you have also profited. You cannot object to this penalty.
It will be like-
You will have a chance to appeal later on, but you cannot object. Since Blaue Poppy also profited on these acts, the severity of the violation has increased, and I therefore sentence Julian to pay his share of the PhD project to charities in Rio's favelas. However, this must not affect their ability to sustain a reasonable way of living and make sure that their children are fed. Blaue Poppy, you have the right to appeal. However, the verdict and the sentence is legally vested by the state with immediate effect, and if you fail to fulfill this penalty within 8 weeks, you will lose all credibility as performance artists.
We are appealing. We are appealing because putting tattoos on us reminds us about an historical moment in the Third Reich where people were marked with tattoos. I don't think that will make the law against structural violence a law that we can make applicable to the world out there. We want to make a precedence case that can be used on you, that watching this, you the jury, in the future. Maybe it's funny to see us with tattoos, but it reminds us of an ugly story that we don't want to be part of. And to pay all that money will put us on the street. So I think we need to find an appropriate penalty. I am more than willing to serve an appropriate penalty. I find this not appropriate. I find this making fun of the law against structural violence. Dear jury and dear audience, together we have done our best to try and make an artistic precedence case.
Dear people in power, now it's up to you. Bring the law against structural violence from the stage and into the parliament, the audience from court stage TV to court TV, and the perpetrators from the trial show to the courthouse. See you in court.
See you in court.